Thank you, everyone, for being at the Water Policy Committee on Wednesday, May 21st. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the approval of the minutes. Councilmember Medina, are you good with the minutes?
Yes.
I am as well. We'll get an okay from Councilmember Coombs when she gets on. So we'll start with consent items. Does anyone want to pull any of the consent items and have a discussion? We're off the hook.
It has been easy on me this year.
We'll go ahead and start with number 3, I guess, is your appointments to the Water Recovery District Board, Marshall?
Yes, so we have 6 members, as we've had for a long time. The term for 2 of the members is up, and they are both interested in being reappointed. So that's Nadine and
There's 3. Nadine, Marina, and Kat.
3 members. Nadine, Marina, and Kat. Kat's right there. So Nadine. Oh, there we go. So they're interested in being reappointed. The thing that's a little more different about the appointments this time around is Bob Roth, who we've completely lost contact with, and has not been participating. We're recommending ending his term early. I spoke with 3 ex-council members who had 2 of the 3 had expressed interest in the past of potentially being on the Metro board. That was Dave Gruber and Brad Pierce. They both said, yeah, thanks anyway, don't necessarily have the time right now. So bumped into Johnny Watkins at, I can't even remember what, at the event. I bumped into him. And he visited with him. He expressed interest, and so filled out an application, and we're recommending the appointment of Johnny Watson.
Okay.
Along with the reappointment of Marina, Kat, and me.
So you just need us to.
Yeah, so just we bring it here to see if anybody has any thoughts or concerns.
Councilmember Coombs, we're on 3, just on the reappointments. I'm fine.
Yeah,
I'm good.
fine with me.
Okay, and then I guess a pitch. We have tried to maintain a balance of half of ex-elected officials and half staff. Nadine has been on this board for a long time and has expressed the last couple of times, I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to be on there. So if any of you are interested, let me know. If any of your peers might be interested.
I have 0 time.
I know right now. So we're good for another probably 3 years, but then we'll probably need.
I'm learning to say no.
That's a good thing. So I might.
We'll see where I
call you in a
land
few-
in a couple of years.
Yep. So, okay, thank you.
All right. And Councilmember Coombs, we're on storage and use of the Cache Creek water rights.
Do you want to go ahead and keep driving while I get
Okay.
logged in, and then I'll.
Very good. Rick is presenting. Always like, he's over there.
Right.
Yeah, this is Rick Keenitz. Thank you for letting me talk about this. This is an IGA with the BLM for BLM's use of Aurora's storage in Box Creek Reservoir, future Box Creek Reservoir, and Aurora's if and when storage in Pueblo Reservoir. This is no cost to Aurora agreement, but payment to Aurora would come with a percentage of the use, percentage of the water that was stored in either of those storage buckets. So a potential gain of water in event that storage is used. This will allow the BLM to solidify their water right and make absolute some of their water right when the time or the opportunity arises. This will make BLM another partner in Aurora's Box Creek multi-agency, multi-use storage project that is slated for in the future. And so that's a benefit to Aurora. BLM's water right is very junior, so their use of our storage space will be limited. Use of Aurora's if and when storage space in Pueblo will be limited as well. But the partnership is important for the future development of Aurora's Box Creek Reservoir. As you know, anything in the Arkansas Basin or the Colorado River Basin for Aurora takes partnerships. And when we can bring an agency like BLM into partnership in some of these projects, it's very beneficial to us. So yeah, that would be my explanation of this IGA, and would seek guidance from the Water Policy Committee as moving forward.
Any questions, Councilmember Bergan?
No, I was just looking at the precondition, so that sounds good in terms of the obligations and use of spinning mountain reservoirs. I'm good.
I'm good as well. So we'll go ahead and move that forward. Presumably to the next study session.
Thank you.
Oh, no, sorry. I'm like, I can go now. My bad. Forgot. Okay, so the next item is the direct potable reuse presentation. Which
Alright, that's us. Let me share. A little presentation button. Yep. I have to man the slides, Kev, so you're gonna be over there. You're gonna have to flip flop between all three of us.
Sorry about that. Laptops.
Hello. Nice to see everybody here. Thank you for the opportunity to come tell you about something that we've been working on for a while. My name's Kevin Linder. I'm the Advanced Water Treatment Superintendent for Aurora Water, and I'm here this morning with elect Catherine Schumacher, engineer with our capital
Yes.
project group, and she's the co-DPR chair with me. And then Shawnee's here today. Whoops. Shawnee's here. She is the deputy director of water for internal and external communication, and she's helping us with the public outreach part. Shawnee Klein, sorry.
That's good. You're
Okay,
good.
so we're gonna talk through this. I'd like this to be a conversational presentation. If you have questions or comments, you don't have to wait to the end. We'll just like to talk through this. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. At Aurora Water, we have a neat story of potable reuse and just indirect, and we're looking at direct, but we've been doing non-potable reuse for a long, long time, and that's our foundation. But some of you might remember in 2002, what started this whole thing was in 2002, it was a pretty severe drought. Our reservoirs were less than 25% full. It was pretty scary. And we took a step back and we saw that our reuse water rights, we were underutilizing them. And most of you are aware that our water right tells us that all the water we bring across the Continental Divide, we can use to extinction, right? So we can bring it down, we can treat it, we can deliver it to the distribution system, then we can collect it downstream after it's been treated at the reclamation facility, and we can bring it back and continue to reuse that water. And so we weren't utilizing that water right like we could. So Peter Binney, who was the director at the time, had a vision of the Prairie Waters Project. And that project came online in 2007 to 2010. I can remember when Mayor Tower was over where Benny is now. We turned the first shovel of dirt in 2007. And we started the Prairie Waters Project. And we started doing this, reusing our water, even when we started doing indirect potable reuse, even when IPR wasn't cool. There was a lot of public concern. We wanted to make sure that all our citizens were good and understood how thoughtful and deliberate we were being with how we treated the water and protected public health. So we were very cautious about how we proceeded. 2010, we came up, we had some public trust strategies. One of the most important ones, I think, is one we still have today, even when we talk about evaluating direct potable reuse, is we want the water to be indistinguishable from all of our plants. We think that no matter where you live in Aurora, we want the water to be excellent. And we don't want anybody to be able to tell, oh, we have a mountain source or we have indirect potable. We want it to be customer equity all the way across. So that was kind of what happened in the beginning. Next slide.
Okay.
And so this was the Prairie Water System. I'm sure all of you are real familiar with it, but I think just as a recap, so the way we captured is up north of Brighton, around Weld County Road 8. We have vertical wells there right now. And so we take that water out of the river through riverbank filtration. We get a lot of really excellent treatment through the riverbank. It's kind of passive. We get lots of carbon removal. We get some removal of biodegradable contaminants like NDMA. And then that water gets pumped 34 miles and lifted 1,100 feet till it shows up at the Benny Water Purification Facility, which is right across the street. And when it gets to Benny, we have some advanced treatment in place. When the water first gets there, back to our indistinguishable goal, we have softening. We want the water to be softened so it matches the water already in the system. So we have precipitative softening. Then we have advanced oxidation, which is a very highly effective process where we're using high doses of UV light and hydrogen peroxide to, we're not concentrating contaminants, we're actually breaking chemical bonds and destroying contaminants. And most of those contaminants that this process removes are contaminants that have persisted through the wastewater plant, and now they're in the South Platte River, and does really well at that. So then downstream of that, we have biofiltration, where we're using granular activated carbon as in a biological mode. And then that helps stabilize the water and remove some biodegradable contaminants in that step as well. And then after that step, we go to the adsorbers. And the adsorbers are polishing step, but they also now, with the regulation of the perfluorinated compounds, that's one of our most important steps because that's one of the handful of ways that you can remove those compounds from the water. So that's the South Platte train. And then remember, we have the Aurora Reservoir train, and we blend those two trains together, disinfect it, send it to our citizens. And the reason we blend it is that's how we manage our total dissolved solids. So we call that our multiple barrier approach. We think it's really effective. We've been doing that 15 years now. And so we've learned a lot. We think we can do it very effectively and very efficiently. Next slide. And so I know there's a lot on this slide, and the small print I apologize for, but in the lower left-hand corner, we have a lot of the contaminants that persist in the South Platte River through wastewater plants and industrial discharges and all those things that make up our source water. And so we have everything from sugar substitutes to flame retardants to antibiotics to herbicides, lots of stuff, right? What I do want you to pay attention to, though, is as we move from left to right, across the table, the number of colored cells diminishes till at the very end, we have hardly anything left. And this is kind of like our report card. Remember, you all remember how much this was $650 million for the Prairie Waters Project. And so it's good to step back and ask ourselves, does it really work? Was it worth all the effort? And when I look at this, I think it was. We're removing a wide, broad range of contaminants. And the good thing is the multiple barrier approach allows us, if one of the processes isn't performing exactly right, and we try to do everything we can to make sure it does, but we have other ways to still remove that contaminant. So he thinks it's very robust, it's very resilient, and so we've been really happy with that.
Can I ask,
Please.
just, with fentanyl being such a thing in the news, obviously that you include that in one of the categories, pain medication or whatever. Is that easily removed?
So fentanyl is, I think we remove fentanyl through the absorption process as well as a little bit through the biology in the filters. So we look at all that stuff, and Roy's trying to see what's on the horizon. We actually have a really nice pilot plant at Binney. So that allows us to try different things because the pilot plant just goes back and doesn't ever get to our customers. So it allows us to look at a lot of that stuff.
So when you get to the end where you've removed all this, can you tell exactly what's left? Or,
Absolutely.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do extensive analysis because remember when we started doing this, part of the reason we thought that multiple barrier approach was important. It's very effective, but we also felt that from a public trust perspective, we wanted to be able to say we're doing everything we can to make sure this water is as safe as it could be. And we still feel that way. So that's our report card. We're proud of that. Next slide. And so one thing to just keep in mind when I talk about indirect or direct potable reuse. So indirect potable reuse is what we're doing now. So the water leaves the reclamation facility. It goes to what's called an environmental buffer, which is our South Platte River. And then it goes to an advanced water purification facility, which is Binney. And then we deliver it to the distribution system. And the environmental buffer is either a source water or some place for the water to stop in the middle for dilution or natural attenuation of pathogens and chemicals. Direct potable reuse, we do away with the environmental buffer. And I think that provides us some advantages because we have a much more controlled, characterized water that we're bringing into the plant. Whereas in the South Platte River, we know what is in there, a lot of it, but there's a lot of illicit dischargers and there's a lot of things in that river that maybe we don't know about or that's very dynamic. But when you go pipe to pipe, you have a very good known water matrix that you're bringing into the advanced treatment plant for treatment. So keep that in mind as we go back and forth.
So we evaluate the water before it goes into treatment that's coming from our systems, from our wastewater systems.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. That's right. So any other questions about this, Kat?
It's just a question that occurs to me right now. So why haven't we done DPR before?
Oh, it's like she's a plant in the room.
Yeah. I was gonna ask that question.
Very interesting question. Catherine's going to get to that on the next slide. Any other questions about any of this stuff I talked about? I'll come talk to you more in a little bit. Catherine's going to talk about where we're at with
All right.
our evaluation.
So actually, to answer your question, Kat, why haven't we done it before? So the drivers for evaluating DPR, the main one was we finally got a regulation. The state finally put together a regulation and a policy that would give us a framework for how to put it in an application to execute a DPR system. So we finally had the roadmap.
Couldn't permit.
Do it.
You couldn't permit.
Oh.
It wasn't allowed in the state before. So that regulation just came out in 2023 and it uses regulation 11. And then they have two policies underneath that regulation or policy 15 and 16. One is specific to DPR and the other is specific to what we call enhanced source water control. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we finally had an avenue to execute that evaluation. Also, another to add on to what Kevin was saying, we were underutilizing the water rights for reuse. So that's another tick box like, hey, let's evaluate DPR as well and really try and use all of our water rights for reuse. Obviously, the system and the population keeps growing regionally in the city. So another driver was we need additional buckets of water to pull from. as well as the untapped capacity of our system. So Prairie Waters, right now, I'm sorry, let me do the second bullet first. Right now, the system uses about 5 to 10 MGD using the Prairie Waters indirect potable reuse system, but we designed the Prairie Waters to 50. So there's this big gap, but we can fill that with potentially a DPR system. And the last thing is system efficiency. So if you go pipe to pipe, that water is already in the system. It goes from pipe 1 to pipe 2. It doesn't get lost in the stream to evaporation to the environment. It's really like squeezing every drop out of every drop. So that's another big driver of why we wanted to evaluate DPR as a utility. So that all led to setting up this DPR evaluation project within Aurora Water. So Kevin and I kind of got appointed as co-chairs. And we're like, okay, what do we want to do? What's our goal here for this evaluation project? The first thing was, let's understand the policy. Let's try to figure out how we could execute this policy. How do we check all the boxes of how we get through this application and make sure it's worth it? We also were like, well, how much do we want to deliver in DPR? You know, we want to diversify our source water portfolio. So let's go. So we thought about it. We talked to various folks and we're like, okay, let's set a goal of maybe 5 to 10 MGD to customers before 2030. That's kind of, we wanted to set that battery limit. Like, what's the quantity of DPR we would be comfortable with in the near term? So then we also had to figure out one of the goals was, well, how are we going to implement this? What do we need to do at Binney? Do we need to change anything at Binney? Do we need to change anything at Sand Creek? What does the implementation look like? And how do we support that through the application? The other piece was, we can't do this in a silo. We can't do this in a box. We have to engage with stakeholders. We have to develop a management plan for internal and external stakeholders. And so once we had all those goals kind of lined out, we're like, okay, we need a team. Kevin and I can't do this alone. So we established the task force. I think it's a cool name, the task force. And what we did is we aligned ourselves with subject matter experts within the utility that check the boxes of the various elements of the policy. So environmental compliance, the treatment folks, the lab, operations, there's a few others. So we got subject matter expert representatives on the task force for that. Then we have a steering committee that we report to, and it kind of explain what the left hand is doing with the right hand, and make sure there's all kinds of good cross communication. And then we have an executive board on top to help us with some strategy and some feedback and budgets and all that stuff. So we kind of have this task force together now. So then we're like, okay, let's break down the policy. What are the actual elements of this evaluation going to need to be? So the first thing is like, well, let's execute the policy. We got to figure out what tasks are required to apply for the application. So that's the big piece. The application includes pieces regarding an enhanced source water control program. I'll explain that in a minute. An outreach plan, an operations plan, just the scheme, the implementation options. So lots of pieces. It's a big regulation, big lift. We also had to figure out the quantity. Again, we had our 5 to 10 goal there, but we also wanted to figure out, well, how much can we really use if we implement this strategy? So we had to figure out quantity. The other big piece is quality. We want to make sure that we're evaluating that source water, just like we do all of our source waters, all of our fresh water sources and all the things. We need to make sure that the quality of the water we're bringing in to the advanced water treatment plant is good, and that we can get rid of necessary pathogens and chemicals and deliver that same indistinguishable water to our customers and protect public health. The other thing was evaluating, again, what are the capital costs? And if we have to change something at Binney, how much is that going to cost? Do we bench test, pilot test? Like, how would we actually implement this system? So that was a big piece of this project as well. And the costs as well. So comparing DPR versus expanding the Prairie Waters indirect potable reuse system, figuring out, hey, is there a trade-off? Like, if we brought DPR into the portfolio, would be able to save money on not putting in a third radio well. In order to meet those overall arching goals of our master plan for source water. So this might be just another avenue for us to add diversity to our portfolio. Something that also we put in the project as an element but wasn't required is regulatory collaboration. Since this is a new regulation and we're one of the first utilities to potentially put in for an application if we decide to move forward as a utility, we wanted to make sure that what we were doing was in line with what the regulatory folks had in mind when they wrote something in the rule. It's like, the gray, the regulation grayness, like we got to figure out, well, did you mean this? If we do this, does that meet what you need to see in the application? So we're meeting with them regularly, collaborating with them often to make sure we're all kind of pulling in the same direction. The last thing we did was an NWRI panel. So this is an organization, it's the National Water Research Institute. They're an organization that pull from industry and regulatory environment, and they bring all these subject matter experts together in a panel for you based on what you want them to evaluate. So it's an independent third party set of eyes on your project. You have workshops with them along the way. They provide feedback and just make sure you're not missing something. So it's a great independent external source for us to make sure we're in the right direction. Okay. I'm talking fast, I'm sorry. Okay, so as part of the study as well, we looked at different connection strategies and of how we could connect these reclaim facilities to Binney. And so what we did first is we looked internally, and this little red circle right there is Binney. And that's going to be our advanced water treatment facility. Then we're like, okay, so Sand Creek is our reclamation facility, and it's located in that red bubble as well. However, to connect it to that pipeline that Kevin mentioned in the green there is a pretty long pipeline. It's the kind of black dashed line. So to connect Sand Creek to the pipeline would be pretty far, but we can do it. So that was one of our connection strategies. In parallel, actually, Metro and Denver Water were starting up a regional DPR study. Again, the regulation came out. Everyone was kind of like, ooh, let's look into this. Let's see if it's valuable to us as well. So they approached us and asked if we wanted to be a part of a regional DPR study. And as part of that study, it was identified that there's the Northern Treatment Plant up there, which is Metro's facility, is pretty close to our Prairie Waters Pump Station 1. And so that connection strategy was also identified and is being evaluated as part of that regional project.
And our internal.
And our internal project, yep. So we're looking from a regional perspective and within Aurora as well.
One is going uphill, one's going downhill.
They're both going downhill, but one's way closer to connect to the downhill.
Okay. So both going downhill?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me with the map.
Yeah. I was like, water flows downhill, everything's down. Yeah, go ahead.
And so we're still determining
Yes,
which connection.
Yes, we're still evaluating. Yes, we're still in evaluation. Yep. But now we have potentially 2 connection points to evaluate. Yep. So taking a step back to enhance source water control. So what that means is there's these sewer sheds that capture all the flows that go into the reclaimed facility. So whether that's Northern Treatment Plant, make my sweet laser, Northern Treatment Plant, which is kind of off the map, or Sand Creek right here, or Height, there's these big areas that are capturing all that sewer shed water and getting treated at the reclamation facility. So as part of this regulation, we have to understand our source water again. So if this reclaimed water is going to be our be used for us, we have to understand what's coming into that sewer shed. So there's these existing programs, like Metro already does this for these areas where they go out and they understand these significant industrial users, and they figure out who's adding to that influent water. So this map just shows the difference between the 2 potential connection points, with Sand Creek being in the purple and blue. I'm going to try and blue. This big center one has about 1,200 significant industrial users that are all contributing to that water, versus the NTP right here, which is about 400. So very different quantities there, just significant industrial users. So what would happen is we worked with Metro to figure out a resource of being like, well, if we went with either connection point, how much more staff would that be for you to execute this this program? And we came up with 3 additional staff for Sand Creek and 2 additional staff for NTP. So that's all part of the information we're using to evaluate the connection points.
And why this is so important is, as you can imagine, trying to understand what everybody's putting into that sewer shed. And it's important so we understand, we can always make sure that our advanced treatment plant is going to be able to treat it. And so this is one of the biggest lifts of the whole application, is trying to put together a narrative on how we're going to be able to accomplish that, how we're going to have authority to do what we need to do. And like Catherine said, Metro is in charge of the pre-treatment program that's been in place for many, many years, but this is different.
now we're looking at water quality parameters, not just permit parameters, right? So it's a big lift, but we're collaborating with Metro. It's been going really well.
Yep.
So
And so is there a difference in water volumes if you were to choose one versus the other, or are we looking at we would use both? Or,
I'm going to talk about that in just a minute.
okay,
Because there is a difference and,
Yeah.
and we think it's an important difference that I'll try to unpack for us here in a slide or two.
great.
Okay.
And then just,
Oh, sorry,
sorry,
Ed.
on that one as well, presumably one of the industrial operations discharging at Sand Creek is the refinery, Suncor.
Suncor, yep. It's one of the 1,200, yes. Okay, so that's enhanced source water control, big lift for the regulation, lots of coordination for that one. All right, now I'm gonna turn it back to Kevin.
So let's talk about some of that. So where we're at so far with this evaluation. So we established our water quality goals for the advanced water treatment plant, finished water. Some of that was already existing. As you know, we're partnership for safe water plants. So a lot of our goals are in alignment with partnership for safe water, but some of the goals we had to develop are based on the analysis we've done on the water coming into the sewer shed and what the plant would have to treat and trying to identify target chemicals that'll help us know, hey, we'll put an alarm in the SCADA system. So if this gets above this number, we know we need to act right now. And so that was the analysis has been a lot, but it helped us identify some of these water quality goals. So like we mentioned, we've been evaluating two potential connections, the Sand Creek, which we connect to Pump Station 3, or the Metro Recovery Northern Treatment Plant, and we connect that to Pump Station 1. And we've mentioned it a bunch of times, but our goal is somewhere between 5 and 10 MGD at or around 2030. So with Sand Creek, the current capacity is 5 MGD. But as I mentioned earlier, a part of Sand Creek's identity is the non-pot, right? I mean, that's been a big foundational piece. And in the summer, that's 3.5 MGD. So that only leaves about 1.5 MGD for DPR. And so, we took a step back and thought about, that's part of what we're considering is 1.4 MGD worth, constructing that big pipeline and in the future, what would that mean? And then when we looked at Metro, it's close to Pump Station 1. It provides a year-round supply. And we'd be able to get about 6 MGD pretty much all the time from Metro in the beginning, and that would go up as our reuse water goes up that we're delivering to the North Treatment Plant. And so North Treatment Plant provides us a year-round supply for DPR at a much less conveyance cost. The other thing that worked out that I'm happy about is we did this comprehensive treatment analysis where we through all different kinds of treatment schemes and different ways to treat that impaired source water. And we wanted to see what's going to give us the best. And luckily, leaving Benny to be Benny was the best choice. And so what's interesting to me is when you think about when we designed Benny in 2005, it was 20 years ahead of its time and is still valid and relevant, the approach we developed then for today for this regulation that we didn't even know was going to be a regulation. So it worked out really well for Aurora Water. We're also continuing pathogen sampling at Sand Creek and NTP because part of the application wants us to do sampling to identify what our log removal values are going to be through the entire process. The enhanced source control we talked about, which is critical with either option, and either option has Metro at the heart of that because of their national pretreatment program they have. We're going to continue to coordinate with Metro on the enhanced source water control plan, but we've also been coordinating with them a little bit, looking at operation plans and what would that look like and some of that stuff, so we can better understand Sand Creek versus the Metro NTP. We've also been like Catherine mentioned, it's really important. We've been walking in lockstep with CDPHE through this whole process. It's the first time either one of us have done this. And it allows them to help us stay on track, but it also allows us to control the narrative a little bit with CDPHE. And we think that's been valuable. It helps us make sure we're on the right track, and it gives us a chance to show them we're on the right track. And then our internal stakeholder engagement is really important. And Shawnee's going to talk about some of the outreach we're doing there here in a couple slides. Next slide. So we talked about cost, and so it's a little bit busy slide, lots of stuff that I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to talk about 4 DPR implementation. One is using NTP effluent. One is using Sand Creek effluent with no upgrades to the plant. The third one is Sand Creek effluent with upgrades to the plant. And the fourth one is we felt like it was always important to compare it to doing no DPR. So some of the assumptions that we're going to make is all the options are going to be in alignment with the Integrated Water Master Plan 2 findings that said we need to have a goal for the Prairie Water System of 20 MGD by 2030, 30 MGD by 2040, and 40 MGD by 2050. We wanted to estimate capital costs. We wanted to estimate O&M costs on an annual basis. And we wanted to incorporate any additional DPR costs that we could come up with on like a class 5 level. We also calculated the amortized total capital cost over a 20-year period with 3.5 increase and add it to the annual O&M cost, because that's kind of industry standard of how we're doing this. So another busy slide, but
That's all the way.
But,
I'll laser points for you. Okay.
okay, so remember these flow scenarios were defined for 2030, 2040, 2050. And they were all in alignment with the Integrated Water Master Plan. It's important to understand though that anything it's not either DPR or expansion of the North Campus. It's DPR plus some level of expansion from the North Campus. So NTP effluent scenario 1, you can see for 2030, we're bringing in about 6 MGD. And then 2040, about 8.5, and then 2050, 10 MGD. And these numbers are a little bit variable. John's explained it to me several times. I still probably couldn't repeat it. But there's some variability in that, and we think that it would be to our favor. So I think these numbers are conservative. And that scenario has us adding 3 or 4 radial wells. Scenario 2 is Sand Creek, just like it is today. You can see our DPR flow would be less, especially in the summer.
Is that 1.4 that we talked about earlier?
Right. Does that make sense? And then,
Yeah, go ahead.
Why is it lower in the summer?
so because we're sending water to the golf courses and to the parks.
Yeah, that's
For
the
the
main.
non-potable read.
Gotcha.
The
Right.
plan can do 5, 3.5's committed. That leaves us the 1 point.
Okay.
No, that's a great question. And then there's also a scenario with Sand Creek with upgrades that are pretty extensive. And then you can see that brings that number up. Still not maybe as high as NTP. And then scenario 4
It's all the.
is no DPR. That's all radial wells. And that would be about 6 radial wells. So that's how that's broken up. It's a lot of numbers. Any questions on any of that?
Yeah,
That would be more than 6 radial wells, wouldn't it?
I think it's the full build out. I thought it was actually 2, 3, 3, 4.
I think it's 2, 4, 4, 6.
4, 4, 6 new radial wells.
Yes, that's correct.
All of it
Yes.
includes existing radial,
Yeah.
which we have 2.
Yeah, like one
Which
and
is how you get to,
right.
so, 1.5. The other, so you guys might remember that we went to the radial well concept because the original plan of all the vertical wells, we would have had to have purchased like the rest of the South Platte River frontage between here and Nebraska and put in hundreds of wells. So the radial wells produce a lot more, but when you start getting up to numbers, even on radial wells up in the 25 or whatever range, one of the reasons we think we need to shift to DPR is it's probably not practical to even install that number of radial wells. There's also assumptions built in here on what the radial wells will produce, which could be a little high, and we might need even more radial wells than that. So,
And what,
Go ahead.
I mean, I understand a vertical well, but a radial is just not deep.
yeah, we should do a
that.
tour. We should get you guys up and show you a radial well. What it is it's a giant center hole. Yeah, hole is a good way to describe it, that goes down, and then you, off of the center giant hole, you install horizontal wells, multiple horizontal wells.
Different
from-
depths and different.
What's that doing to the aquifer?
Well, you access more water from the aquifer, and keep in mind, the aquifer we're accessing is tied directly to the South Platte River.
Oh.
So the impacts to the aquifer aren't necessarily, there's not really negative impacts to the aquifer. In fact, a lot of places we're installing the wells, the dewatering of that area near the river is beneficial to the property owners in those areas. We actually are dealing with a few property owners that are either filing or threatening to file claims because there's too much water. So that's not as much the challenge. The challenge becomes the soils can only give up so much water in any given time, and the river that provides the water to that area only has so much water. And then we have to augment the river, which is another challenge. So there's,
Oh, and we're augmenting the river with the mountain water?
With the effluent, right?
The same water that would come to feed DPR.
Oh, okay.
mostly the effluent, yes. But some irrigation return flows, combination of a few other things. So there's limitations with the well fields for indirect potable reuse that might be physically prohibitive to do scenario 4. I don't think scenario 4 is actually even feasible.
So there's that
Which
piece,
is-
and then there's also the cost piece, right? So we're either doing
Yeah.
2 or 4 in the other 2 cases, or 6. So what is the well cost difference between 2, 4, and 6? And then
Yeah.
also, what is the upgrade cost for scenario 3 for Vinny?
And that's another leading question, right?
Right, so, the scenario 3, that those upgrades would all be at Sand Creek. And we don't have a slide with those numbers. But we have calculated that. And the upgrades at Sand Creek would be somewhere in the neighborhood, Earl, help me if I get this wrong, somewhere around 25 to 50 MGD. Because you'd have to.
Million.
Million, not in our.
Like, what? That's a lot of.
I apologize.
Water current.
You're
Okay.
good, it's
I'm a
fine.
water guy, not a money guy.
25 million, gotcha.
50.
Yeah, so it's
Between 25 and 50.
it's pretty significant.
Yeah, that's
And
huge.
probably,
Toward the 50 side, because everything is costing
Yeah,
more than. we
that's
think
right.
it's gonna cost.
That's right.
The other complexity with Sand Creek is the pipeline is a much more urbanly developed area. So snaking a new pipe through that will be much more
Gotcha.
complex and could be a lot more conflicts that we have to.
And you're
deal
what,
with.
ripping up roads?
Yes, and we will.
Having be
Yes.
responsible for fully
Actually, no.
replacing.
Don't do that while
Right.
I'm in office.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be in your area, I'd be in Denver
Just kidding.
or Adams County, so, you know.
The other thing that's really, that I want to emphasize again, that Catherine mentioned is the thing about DPR is that molecule of water is already in our system.
Right.
It's resistant to what's happening in the river.
Yeah.
So it's more sustainable, it's more secure, it's more robust. And so something to keep in mind, I'll talk about some of the losses in the next slide, but this was a lot. Did I answer your questions?
The well cost is the only other piece, like, so the difference between 2, 4, and 6.
Each well, I can look it up. I'm sharing right now, so I can pull up later, but I think it's like somewhere like 16 million per well.
Okay,
And that included the conveyance, the land, the construction, the whole thing. I can get you that number.
So it'd either double or triple
Oh
the
my
well cost to
Yeah.
do anything other than scenario.
Yeah.
Return on investment.
We got it around for the second well, and the total project cost for that one was almost 15 million.
Yeah. And,
job.
and of course, there's an energy cost as well. So that's the other part that has to, the operational cost is higher. Yeah.
Okay,
So I think the main point on this slide is we have to meet our goals for IWMP2, right? The 20, the 30 and the 40 MGD across those years. But this is a different way to like meet those obligations by using the wells and potentially using, if we do DPR, it's a great way to like diversify the portfolio, just like in your home finances, you don't want to have all your money in stocks or bonds. You want to like diversify it if you need to. So this just shows how we can break those up amongst these opportunities to meet the goals of the IWMP2.
Thanks, Catherine.
Okay.
Yeah, next slide.
This is a lot too.
So let's
Lots of
talk
slides,
about-
of crowded slides.
So just some additional considerations, some of the stream losses that we're incurring currently do an IPR versus in the future if we go toward DPR. Right now, when you discharge water into a receiving body, stream losses are calculated using 0.5% per mile in the summer and 0.25% per mile in the winter, and that's due to evaporation. And so there's also 1% approximately of system losses assumed for the operation of gravel pits for water augmentation that John mentioned. And the calculations are based on 25% of radial flow routed through the gravel pits. Currently, Colorado does not require accounting for losses between the river and the well, but we know there are some, right? Because we're pulling water through dirt and through gravel, so we're going to lose some there. And then on the average, the DPR at NTP receives a 3% stream loss credit, and Sand Creek receives a 9.4 stream loss credit averaged over the year. And that's because the difference in that is because of the distance from where that water is discharged into the South Platte to where we pull it out at the North Treatment Plant. Sand Creek discharges from Height, which is farther, right? So Aurora uses a cost of $32,000 per acre foot, applied as a one-time fee. So DPR going pipe to pipe would, if we did scenario one, which was NTP effluent, was 10.8 million savings.
Yes.
Right. And then the scenario two is the same. It's crazy how it ended up being the same number. And the reason is because NTP is about 3 times the flow, but it's going 3 times, Sand Creek's going 3 times longer. So they end up being the same number. And then with upgrades, Sand Creek, bless you, would be 16.75 savings. Does that make sense?
So this could be like a one-time credit to the capital cost for stream loss that we could apply to each of the scenarios.
okay, so that's
Yeah.
one time, and then the
Right.
one-time costs for the upgrade are minimum 25 million.
Yeah. And Marshall knows a lot about this. He mentored me in all this stuff. So I got it right. Next
Lots
slide.
of water
Okay.
things.
So I think the punchline is what, Kevin, that,
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry. So the punchline is when we did this number crunching, NTP still came out to be less expensive than the other options. And a lot of that was captured in the capital cost for building it because we have, one of the things that's cool is we have an advanced water treatment plant. So we're not starting with a blank sheet of paper. So we tried to leverage that. And so we do realize that, that factors into it. So NTP option was significantly less.
now Shawnee's turn.
So
Shawnee, unpack the.
yeah, so one of the things that we went over a little bit earlier is as part of a Reg 11 is there is actually very prescriptive requirements in terms of what you have to do for public communication. And it makes great sense. So as we are in this phase of evaluation right now today and May 21st of 2025. We are already thinking forward about what we're going to look at in terms of permit application. Those prescriptive requirements that I'll talk to about in the next slide, they have to all be done 60 days prior to permit application. We're thinking about permit application sometime in 2026. So in 2025, we want to be able to really remind everybody of the fact that we're already doing indirect potable reuse. And you just heard a great presentation on how we have this advanced water treatment facility that was 20 years ahead of its time, really, in a lot of ways. And so really just providing that understanding to people and reminding them, because one of the things that we found is that most people don't realize that they're already getting potable reuse. And so it's nice to be able to remind folks, we're already doing this. And also to remind folks as well of the fact that we live in a region, and people should know this, living in Aurora, that water supply availability is just not what it is in the east in some areas, right? It's a very precious resource. And a lot of the feedback that we've gotten from folks is, hey, reuse is where we need to go. The good news is we're already doing it. So we're going to, we've been doing this, but we're just going to boost and elevate information about what we're already doing with respect to our water resources and also our treatment through the Prairie Water System. And that is going to include things like deliberately going and seeking out different community organizations to find champions within the community that can really help us to get the good, positive messaging out about the quality of the water that we're already serving to folks through our advanced water treatment facility. So that is the first thing. Yeah.
What is the mix between the water that's treated versus the mountain water? Like, what's that mix?
So at Benny right now, our goal that drives what the blend is we want our TDS to be around 400. So that's about about 1.2 or 1.3 parts of mountain water to 1 part South Platte water.
Oh, so it's pretty
Close.
okay.
And TDS, keep in mind.
Because I think people are confused. Like, people think they don't realize it's coming from the
South Platte.
south. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think being able to pull back the veil a little bit so that people can really understand, yes, a vast majority of our water does actually come through just the mountain supply, which is fantastic. But for us to be able to make sure that we're going to have the resiliency that we need, it's really important that they also understand that we have this opportunity because of the fact that we've been very thoughtful and proactive in how we've acquired our water rights, that we can reuse up to 95% of it. That's huge.
Right.
That's not something that a lot of municipalities and utilities can say that they can do. So we want to make sure that we're demonstrating that and also showing that we're leveraging the cost we've already paid for the water so that we continue to use it as much as possible. As I mentioned, though, there are some very technical details that Reg 11.14 says that we have to do.
Before we hop
Yes,
into this, can I
please.
just ask a quick question? So I know like one of the ways we kind of pull back that veil for folks is doing the Benny tours.
Yes.
Do we have capacity to increase those? And do we have a virtual Benny tour that folks could do?
We do not yet have a virtual Benny tour. However, that is one of the things that we definitely want to be able to include and increase in what we're doing for the online access. And so to your point, I actually have a schedule that we have hammered out to figure out how we're going to get more tours through the plant, because one of the things that we have found is, first of all, people go through the plant. They're like, whoa, right? They're like that. But also that makes them champions for Aurora water. And that's one of the things that we're going to need, because the truth of the matter is when we talk about direct potable reuse, and we are in a different situation than like San Diego was over 20 years ago when they tried to do this, is one of the things that can derail DPR is public communication and how the public feels about it. So we've got two pretty big projects that are in the works right now. Direct potable reuse is being looked at in the future, as is Wild Horse, and both of those are very public processes. So one of the things that's important for us to do is make sure that we've got integrated messaging that's going to help folks to be able to kind of calm nerves and reach people before we have that opposition. So some of that is including outreach to our WISE partners. They're going to be receiving some of this water, so we're going to need to make sure we're doing that. Also, our connectors through Metro. If we're looking at the Northern Treatment Plant, we're no longer talking about just the dischargers that go into Sand Creek. We're talking about other municipalities like Denver and Commerce City and Fort Lupton and Brighton. And so working really closely with Metro so that we can have enhanced communication well ahead of us being able to go out and do permit application. Yes.
So how do you convince them that the current system with the environmental buffer is going to be comparable to the direct? Because I'm thinking, well, at least that's like an extra.
Right, it goes through the gravel.
Yeah, it's already, I'm like, that makes me feel better.
It does make people feel better. However, here's one of the other things that's super important that folks understand is that, as Kevin said, we have much better control when we go pipe to pipe. There are things that can end up in the South Platte River that we never knew could end up there. And actually, some of what makes it through the like stormwater flows, those non-point source discharges, are actually far more scary than anything that goes into the actual sewer shed itself. When we talk about Metro and their pretreatment program, one of the things that we have as a benefit is Brett Eisenagel who works now for Metro Water Recovery. He actually is one of the people that helped to write this regulation and for enhanced source control. So one of the things that we want to make sure that we do is really have people understand how there has been regulations in place for decades that help to protect wastewater treatment plants, and those same regulations with a little bit more robustness actually are going to help us to make sure that the water that is going directly from pipe to pipe is in a lot of ways more reliable and safe than anything we can pull out of the South Platte River. So that's a really important thing to bring up. Thank you for saying that. And
How do we balance that with like not then
Not
making
scaring
people
them to death?
distrust the South Platte?
Absolutely.
water?
Well, absolutely.
oh.
And so when we're starting to talk about volumes, this is really a good point that you bring up. When we start talking about volumes, I think one of the things that we've got, first of all, is great history with our Prairie water system. We have never had a reason for people to distrust us because we have always been able to not just meet but exceed regulations. And that is the reason for phase one, is to have people really be able to fully understand. But when opposition comes up and says, now, wait a minute, you've lost your environmental buffer, our opportunity to say is, yes, where we've lost the environmental buffer, we make up for it with enhanced source control. And that is an important element that people are going to need to understand. So when we get into the details of what is required through Reg 11, there's the devil's in the details because the opposition is also in the details, right? And so we are going to construct messaging that we are going to test through focus groups, because the thing is that in our heads, we might think this is great, but we actually need feedback from the community. So as we move into 2026, we're developing messaging and we are going to be testing that with focus groups and refining it, because it's not just the words, it's also imagery. People take in information in different ways. The way that we can create infographics so that it's more understandable to people is really important. And also taking that super technical information and bringing those cookies to the lower shelf so that everybody can access it and understand what it means. It's not something that's easy to do. No. And I've been at this for a long time, but I'm not going to make the assumption I'm going to get it 100% right. And that's why we want to be able to test messaging. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us coming into next year, not only just pulling in stakeholders and collaborators and working with folks, but also in developing and testing the messaging that we're going to need to use so that people can really be assured that we've got this multi-barrier protection. We're going to have other things in place too to ensure that the water is going to be safe for their families.
When I think the Binney tour does a really good job of kind of telling the story of the water. And I think that the complexity is going to be like, how do you tell the story of the pipe to pipe?
Yep, absolutely.
In a way that people are comfortable with.
Marshall, I think you had something.
The other thing that's a little bit unique for us is that we'll maintain a combined system, IPR, DPR.
Yeah.
So if one of the advantages of an environmental buffer, in theory at least, is if you've got issues going into the environmental buffer, you could probably not take the water out of the, wherever that spot is, right? The river. The way our system will work is if we have an issue, we still don't necessarily, we can turn the pipe off. There's somewhere for the water to go. So we've still got that protection, or at least some of the protection of the environmental buffer, because we've got a combined system. So figuring out how to message that, get people to understand that, could be important.
And I think the other important message that we want to get out there, I know Shawnee's up for this, is, so we have an advanced water treatment plant, but I mentioned Partnership for Safe Water before. There's a phase 4 excellence in treatment award that you apply for and that they grant. There's 19 utilities in the whole country that have that, 3 of them in Aurora.
Oh.
And Benny is one of those, and it's the only advanced water treatment plant that has that accreditation. So I think that if I was a citizen, that would make me feel good, that no matter what the source is or what the nature of that water is, we're going to make sure that it surpasses any regulatory numbers or.
I think it really speaks volume, and as we've been saying, we've been working closely with CDPHE, but I think it really speaks volumes when CDPHE says to us, we are thankful that you are going to be one of the first to look into doing this, because they recognize the stability of our existing system and that we have the technical knowledge on how to be able to do this and do it well.
Do I mention here? Okay. All right, summary. We're almost done.
So, for the summary, we talked about it a lot, but just to encapsulate it. So we've been doing potable reuse since 2010. We've been doing it very successfully. We learned stuff, some of it the hard way, but never once did it affect water quality leaving the plant. And we feel that DPR provides us with several advantages that we talked about. Drought resistance is very sustainable. Talked about some of the efficiencies that we're currently incurring in the South Platte. We wouldn't incur those doing pipe to pipe. Again, I want to emphasize the ability to control the water quality that's coming into the advanced water treatment plant. That's going to be monitored. It's going to have analyzers on it as it's throughout the metro or the Sand Creek process. So we will have the ability to identify anything we don't like ahead of time before it gets to the advanced water treatment plant, before we deliver it. Again, the 3 R's, reliability, redundancy, resiliency. We think DPR improves all those things for us. And then Marshall hit on the risk and uncertainty with radial wells to get production natural versus an engineered system, right? So we feel like DPR gives us an advantage in all those areas. Catherine mentioned it adds diversity to our source water portfolio. And like I mentioned earlier, it is less expensive capital costs for DPR implementation, and 2025 amortized costs are comparable to non-DPR options for the 2 potential connection strategies. So we feel that we can check all our boxes. The DPR is a really good solution for us to continue to evaluate for Aurora Water and the citizens of Aurora.
Okay, so next steps. We're not done yet. We have a bunch more sampling and data analysis to complete. The regulation requires we sample for about a year and collect that data and analyze it in various ways. So we're in the thick of that right now. The communication plan is huge, working on our study sessions, presenting to you all here and other groups within Aurora, figuring out the right timing for ward meetings maybe, and then hitting those required public notices as part of phase 2. So lots and lots of communication once we figure out where we're going with this project and this evaluation. We also have to do, whether it's the connection strategy or either way with the enhanced source water, we're going to have some sort of IGA with Metro if we pursue DPR. So that's going to be a hurdle to get over as well. And then obviously we have to get together and put the application in late 26 if we pursue this. And there's a huge operations piece plan as part of that as well that we have to work through on how we operate the system. There's dashboards. Where are these critical control alarm points? What do we do if anything dings? There's a lot to go into that operations plan that we have to flesh out as well, that we're working on, just kind of getting our framework on now. So lots, we're not there yet, but we've at least figured out lots already. So,
The good thing about the operations plan,
yeah,
a lot of the prescriptive documentation within the policy, we've been running our plant that way for 20 years.
right.
So it's just formalizing it in a DPR, through a
Right.
DPR lens and getting whatever connection point we use incorporated into that.
Yep.
So
that's all. Sorry, we're a few minutes. I don't know. Were we 40 minutes long? Are we okay?
I don't know.
Okay.
We don't have any other.
Oh, we have all the time. Okay. So that's us, DPR evaluation.
Any
project.
questions? Did I answer your question, Kat?
Yes, you
Okay.
did. Thank you.
Good, good.
We're here and we probably won't be the last time you see us, so we'll be back to present more.
See some more.
I just had a couple of ideas occur, like maybe when you have that system that shows you, when things are going wrong or what that looks like, maybe you can have like a simulation of that at the like youth water
Yeah,
festival or Aurora History Museum or some other ways, because then.
I think coming up with creative ways of being able to demonstrate, because again, sometimes words are just not adequate, right? People need to actually physically see something with their eyes to be able to make those connections. So that's a great idea.
Or even like run the operations board or something.
Right, exactly.
And say like, okay, oop, fake alarm over here. What happens?
That'd be interesting.
That'd be cool.
So,
That'd be good for training too.
True. But yeah, then you could also make those available at these different engagement
so
opportunities.
we're expanding Benny at some point, right?
So that Benny is built for 50 MGD.
So we
Right
got a long
now.
ways.
Yeah, so the way that plant was designed is if you remember how it's set up, you have the South Platte train on one side, on the south side, and the AR train on the north side. Well, the South Platte train, when we built the plant, we built it for the full build out, which was 50. To increase the Aurora Reservoir train, the plan was to just build another duplicate of the AR train next to that. And so then you would have flock said and another chlorine contact base. But I don't think that's, it's not in the CIP for the next 20 years at least. But
Because there's not.
Because we're not at capacity.
But we're constantly expanding things out. Benny, right? We
absolutely.
expanded the GAC
We're
filter.
doing that right now. Yes.
Yeah, and so it's the Prairie Water System. We've been expanding basically ever since it was brought online, whether it's at the North Campus with well expansions or the radial wells, or at Benny with the filtration, the GAC filters. So it, we put pumps in pump stations, right?
Yeah, in the Robertsdale pump station, we're putting some additional pumps in there so we can get more water out of Benny, so it can produce more. Like Marshall said, we're working on getting more adsorbers equipped. When we built the plant, we built 8 boxes for adsorption, only equipped 5. And now that we're looking at bringing the DI connection in and some of these other Prairie Waters connection points and sources, we needed that increased adsorption. A lot of it's driven by the perfluorinated compound regulation. We got to make sure we have GAC to treat all that. The other thing that's interesting is part of the application requires us to build a control panel, but the way the state wants it is, so there's going to be one view for plant operations, but then there'll probably also be another view for regulators and possibly even another view for the public. So that would be interesting.
Little dashboard.
Yeah, dashboards, yeah. Exactly.
Cool. But essentially, we're set up so that we can use the major infrastructure we already have, make some minor upgrades to it
Exactly.
to kind of cover the needs.
Yeah, yeah, we positioned ourselves really well, and it was interesting. We did it before maybe we understood we were positioning ourselves for, but it worked out really well. I mean, we're in a good spot.
That's like, thank you, Peter Benny.
That's amazing. That's like incredible.
Thanks, y'all. This is super fascinating.
Thank you. And
complex, and thank you for doing it.
I will retain 10%.
Now you know what an environmental buffer does. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
You. Any other questions from you, Councilmember?
Oh, I went the wrong way.
So then we're on to miscellaneous matters. Do we have any?
thank you for those who were able to make the event on Saturday. I heard it went well.
It went well. We needed traffic, but
Oh, sounds like many people.
not as many as last year. Yeah.
I want to talk
But
to
there was
y'all about
conflict.
scheduling for that because I'm probably going to have to go down to Lamar the same timeframe next year.
Well, and
Same
Fire
thing.
had their,
It's routine. Yeah, there were like 6 events.
there
or
was a bunch of
something on
events going on.
Saturday.
Yeah.
So
So we need to look a little more closely at the days. Okay. We can do that.
But it was good. Yeah, the speakers were good.
Good. Other than that, I don't think,
Anything big coming up?
well, we need to, we're still working on that water supply part 2 presentation.
right.
I think I may have given you a little bit of a preview that and again, one of the reasons DPR, another reason it's so important to us is we're trying to create as many efficiencies as we can in our system to use the water and reuse it and make it efficient. If we look at our future growth in Aurora, we're still not very, there's still a lot of available space to build out in. So we've, the master planning process this time around looked out 50 years like it usually does, looked at some of the recent annexations and the demands that will add to the system. And one of the challenges we're going to have to figure out what we want to do with pretty soon is water supply wise, the costs are astronomical. So we're talking, I think the number is somewhere in the $4 billion range to acquire water supply just to meet demands within our existing city limits. Our planning area boundary is a lot bigger than our city limits. And we're not even sure, staff is not even sure with all the things we're doing that we would be able to acquire water supplies for the entirety of
So
the
when we're
planning.
looking at new annexations, you guys do that cost analysis, whatever it's called. But do you need to put in maybe some more criteria for council to consider
Yes.
in an annexation? Because it's,
Yeah.
it's always congruent, it's like
That's
Ambiguous and right, like the requirements are fairly
Yeah. Straight.
prescriptive and focused on the land masses themselves, not all of those other considerations.
So we are looking at what do we think we might need to do to add to the criteria for both extraterritorial service agreements, annexations. Because as we're looking out in those future years, again, we'll be fine for all of us.
Right.
But we want to position the city well for a future past us from a water supply perspective. And so that we're having discussions right now with Jason, get planning and development services all at the table and walk through some of the constraints, some of the challenges, and figure out how we want to manage that. Not all annexations are equal either.
Right.
An infill annexation of a 1 acre parcel is not as big of a deal as like an eastern annexation.
And it's hard to balance also like because one argument would be, oh, it's going to bring in X jobs potentially if it's a commercial, zoning area. And then what is that to the economic impact to the city versus the water?
Cost
The
of the
cost of,
water.
yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, and again, cost, we think we can manage the cost problem. And that's kind of what the approach we took in the previous annexations was the connection fees are going to go up and up and up because the costs of the water supply continue to go up and the infrastructure as we have to move it further or do things like partnering with mining entities to manage different infrastructure than what we have before. Now what we're running into, and we had efficiency opportunities previously too, where we wanted to tighten up outdoor irrigation. So you guys supported us on the conservation ordinance. We've got the large water user guide that we're still planning to bring to council later this year that would codify water use criteria for what works and what is too much. Even with all of those things in place, now we're literally looking at, again, decades from now, but we're looking at, can we even acquire the water, even if the money is available
Right.
to do that? We've got the things going on the Colorado River, more and more counties and local entities are creating 1041 processes to specifically block our ability to move water from elsewhere. There is no water, there's no additional water available in Aurora, obviously. We have to import all those water supplies. And so if we've got northern water right now running around doing presentations up north, trying to encourage counties and local entities there to create 1041 processes to block our ability to acquire water there. We signed years ago the IGAs in the Arkansas Basin that capped how much water we could bring out of there. So it's literally, can we acquire, even if we had money, even if money was no object, can we literally acquire enough supplies to support much more than what's already in the city limits? So that's the challenge we're looking at.
And I wonder, like, if there are some other creative conversations we can have, for example, about like, establishing more open space areas that wouldn't be irrigated, that like we then would not plan to develop to help reduce the water.
That's a great question. One of the ideas that came out of the water supply demand team was
The land that we have, well, we would have to buy it, I guess, but right, like land that we've annexed.
Yeah, we'd have to
That
buy.
we are currently planning to water for
Yeah.
residential and commercial. Could we kind of buy it and say like, this is a,
could we,
prairie park or a
Conservation.
whatever, conservation.
yeah, the idea that came out of the water supply demand team, very similar to that, was if an annexation is proposed, can we require the developer to do something like
To
that?
provide a certain chunk of non-irrigated
Here's,
space, like.
well, their
irrigate.
idea was if they want to add 10 acres of demand to our system that we don't currently have, can they go into the existing city limits, acquire another 10 acres and preserve it with no future water demand? So ideas like that are kicking around. They're definitely outside the box ideas, but
I mean, if there's no water.
right, if we want to grow any more beyond where current city limits are, we'll have to do more outside the box things.
Well, and, even though there's complaints on tap fees, connection fees and all that, in the end, if they want water, they're gonna pay for it. And it seems like the money has not been an obstacle, right? So it's always difficult from the other side to be like, yeah, we can recoup our costs monetarily, but what are we doing to the supply? And
And do we have the supply, right? We can say, yeah, sure, you can throw as many millions of dollars you want at this problem, but if the water isn't there, then those millions of dollars don't do anything.
Right. And that's again where and we got into that a little bit in the part one where we said, look, the Arkansas Basin back 15, 20 years ago, Aurora signed agreements that said we'll only go down there to acquire another 10,000 acre feet. So we capped what we would take out. That recent partnership agricultural thing we did represented about 7,500 of that 10,000. So we've only got another 2,500 we can acquire down there. And the demands we're looking at are in the 50,000 acre foot range within existing city limits. And then if you add more annexations that expand that, the number goes up. So we can't go to the Arkansas Basin for that. The Colorado Basin is ratcheted down quite a bit with what's going on the Colorado River. So that leaves us the South Platte Basin, which now, again, Northern is actively out there trying to get entities to create ratchets there that tighten up what would be able to acquire from the South Platte Basin. So then you're looking at, do you expand into another basin where we literally have no infrastructure, no way
And
to
where
get
the water is also not plentiful.
and where the water's also not plentiful.
It's
So-
not like we have some areas we can tap into with.
There's not a
Plentiful
big
water
major river
supply.
we didn't know about.
The water, so the state of Colorado has a lot of water, but it's tied to agriculture, and that's where the Arkansas agreements limited or capped our ability to transfer water out of ag there. The Colorado Basin is interesting because most of the agriculture in the Colorado River Basin is on the west slope. And they created limitations, and they continually actively work to inhibit or prohibit our ability to get any more water out of the Colorado River Basin. So then you're looking at the South Platte. There is a lot of agriculture in the South Platte. But if counties or local entities start creating limitations like the other basins have, which is the writing that's on the wall, we may run into limitations to pull water out of ag there. So, and the approach Northern is taking is they're telling their members, they're saying, hey, the water use is here already. We can't let it leave. So if we're going to convert ag to muni or industrial or other uses in their service area, they're arguing that it should only occur there and they shouldn't allow
It shouldn't be able to.
Yep.
So it's a challenge, and we are going to have to come up with a combination of additional criteria. We'll change our annexation process or our extraterritorial agreement process to tighten some of those things up, and or come up with some more outside the box things we might be able to do for a consideration.
Maybe a developer can say, we will do no outdoor irrigation, and we'll develop a plan that includes no outdoor irrigation. And that reduces their water impact in a way that enables them to still build. But like, yeah, we're gonna have all those discussions. So,
So that's coming.
right. Well, we are at time. I think our next meeting might technically fall during CML.
Does it? Oh, dear.
I'm gonna check. Oh, 18th. Okay, then we're good. It's the
Okay.
week before CML.
Oh, week before, yeah. good.
Yep, that works for me. Does it work for everybody else?
And we're, signing up for the water tour.
Right,
Yep.
water tour.
Yes, I think I
7th, 28th.
replied, but I'll confirm.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I am planning to attend.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.